Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two people compulsively study history and may or may not have stayed up till 2 a.m. learning just one more thing. Just one more thing. I just got to learn the one last thing.
hmm
And then
Facts.
we come to tell each other the one more thing. I'm Theresa,
Facts. I'm
and
Angie.
that's facts.
Ha! There you go.
Mm, mm. And
I
I
was gonna
was,
follow that up with these are things.
these are things. And it does check.
Truly.
Right before we hit record, Angie informed me that even though we did just very recently record, I did indeed go last. And so I will indeed go first.
Ha!
And what was even better is I did think, I think I go first, even though we literally just recorded. And then right before I hit record, I was like, yeah, my brain's kind of, we should go because my brain is kind of melting. She's like, yeah, you go first. Like, we're not even gonna fight about it.
I'm not even trying to rock, paper, scissors this one. You win.
Well, in which case I'm gonna jump right into it.
Okay.
I'm
I
going to
hope you
tell,
chose the same story as me.
I highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. I'm going to tell you about the fall of the Parthenon.
Okay. That
My
is not the same
sources,
story as me.
yeah, I would have been shocked. I'm going to tell you, so my sources, GreekReporter.com, the day the Acropolis Parthenon was destroyed by a Macris. And PBS Nova, they have a thing on the secrets of the Parthenon's many lives. Like those are the main sources that I'm going with. Um, how much do you know about the Parthenon?
No, at present, I know when I was much younger, I knew a lot more, but I'm gonna tell you I know like on a scale of one to Tyrion Lannister, I'm like a Jon Snow.
I don't understand this rating system
I
at
know
all.
nothing.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's what I needed.
You're you're welcome.
I'm glad I started by saying
Those
my brain is melting. That's why I didn't get the you know nothing, Jon Snow.
you're welcome.
Okay.
I
Well,
I know it was gorgeous, but that's about the extent of the knowledge I can just pull from my brain very
okay.
quickly.
Um, I will say, having recently gotten to go there, it is at the top of the hill. With the Acropolis is this giant hill in Athens, and there's just a bunch of buildings up there. And you go up there, and there's a ton of scaffolding and tons of things being put, and cranes and the whole nine, and elbow to elbow people. And there's not enough water, and there's zero shade. That's what you see. Okay, now with that, I'm going to kind of give you the full run through to get to where we're going because it's a ride. It's a ride.
Okay, I'm buckled.
So we're going to start off in 480 BC. Um, the original iteration, it's not the word I was going for, but that's the word we're going to roll with. It is a temple dedicated to Athena the Virgin. There's a ton of
Oh,
like,
yeah, I had that in my brain too, but I was like, no, it's not Athena.
I
Okay,
mean,
sorry.
Athens is the city of Athena.
Yeah, you know what though? But my brain was not thinking about Athens. My brain was actually thinking about Diana. So here we are.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
They're right. Now, I will say that the temple that was there was actually there was a temple prior to that, right? And that was to Athena, the patron goddess. There's little known about this structure because it's kind of lost in a fire, but these are things. Now, the in 480 BC, that's actually when the Persian forces come through and they sack the city and then they demolish the Acropolis, which seems like a strong feat. Now, this devastation is kind of a big deal because approximately 100 Greek city-states joined forces to form the Delian League. And that's like a democratic military alliance that is headed by Athens. And the member states combine money and warships and alliances and power. And then they kind of put Pericles up and they put him as their figurehead. And he makes Athens into this great and powerful thing. Now, he also spearheads the Parthenon's construction, and that begins in 440. Sorry, my brain just
Yeah.
didn't brain 447 BC. And it took workers 8 years to complete the temple. Now, the temple, as you know, it ends up being finished, is 23,000 square feet.
Oh,
So
so
it
like a
is,
Costco.
yeah, actually, but
I
a
gotta say, that
Costco
is not
worshiping a god or goddess.
that is not what I had on my bingo card for what I was gonna say today.
I mean, I don't know the last time I've heard anything compared to a Costco, but this is just proof that Americans won't use the metric system.
Facts. Only for cocaine.
Facts. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit, not too far, because we're going from 447 to 438. There's a massive 40-foot statue of Athena. It's made of gold and ivory. It sounds gorgeous. And it's put out in front because this is the temple to Athena. And it's thought to be that at this temple, this is going to be one of the dumber things I say today, that young girls worship the goddess. And Nova calls them a cult. Now, it's accurate, but it feels weird, right?
What part feels weird? That calling
The
them a cult?
cult. Yeah, calling the
Okay.
cult of Athena, like that feels off. Like, I get that it's historically accurate. I get that until you reach the tipping point of number of worshipers, you're a cult. Like, we were an upstart Christian cult until, we had enough critical mass. But it just feels like, I mean, cult as I use it
I
often.
think I think the reason it feels weird, if I had to guess, is because our understanding of the word has been skewed today by what we have seen in the last 40 to 50 years as being cults compared to what they could have been back, when you worshipped Dionysus and you just got drunk and took a nap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, I mean, now you're giving all your possessions to somebody and they're exploiting all your labor. And then there's a punchline.
Yeah, there is. Good job. Nailed
I'm,
it.
yeah. Um, so, okay, we're going to fast forward quite a bit because we just went like little short jumps, and now we're going to go to the 6th century AD. And this was a turn I didn't see coming. The Christians move in and convert it to a church.
Did not see that coming. I'm gonna say it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that was just one of those moves that I was just like, huh, this neighborhood got
Okay.
real weird.
I do what you're gonna do, I guess.
The new owners just came in and redecorated. The Parthenon had remained a temple like for a decent long period of time before these Christian Byzantines who come in. And then they start like a series of decrees and they're outlawing pagan worship as they're
In
inside the
a
pagan temple.
temple. Yeah, okay. This checks.
Yeah, I mean, look, consistency.
We're nothing if consistent, if not consistent.
There's a couple of moments in this story where you're going to be like, oh, consistency. So just hold that thought. Now, they end up making a couple of structural changes, kind of changing a little bit of how the decorators, work because the previous owners just had a very different vibe than these
Aesthetic.
Christians were going for. Yeah. Um, the famed statue of Athena had already been removed, maybe after a fire in the 3rd century. These are
Okay.
things. Now, in its place, the Christians install a pulpit and a marble bishop's throne. And
We get a marble bishop's throne, but we can't have a statue of of Athena. Okay.
I mean, but you just change the head sing and then she becomes Our Lady Athens, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that does end up being
I
the Christ or the Latin cathedral, Parthenos Maria. So I was being a smartass to get up in there, but these are things. So
well done.
Honestly,
10 points to Slytherin.
yep, I'll take it. The concept of worshiping Christ in a pagan temple is fascinating to me. And I can't even imagine worshiping there because the old gods are looking down, being like, in my own house.
I never said you could watch a Cowboys game on my TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm So we're going to zip forward a little bit further because it's 1458, and the Parthenons function as a church along with the Byzantians, running around. It lasts for a little bit longer until the Turkish Ottoman Empire captures Athens. And then they
I saw that
decide,
coming.
right, well, they roll the dice and they're like, you know what? Let's take down these crosses and it's a mosque.
Yeah, like that. Ta-da!
And for years, it operates as a mosque, and the Muslims conduct their worship beneath numerous Christian paintings, a very large mosaic of the Virgin Mary. And the Turks even incorporate some of the details from the building's past, like including there's an Ottoman traveler named Evliya Celebi. He described a painting of the Last Judgment depicting an extraordinary range of figures that were pagan, Christian, and Muslims. And apparently, there's faint traces of that painting that exist today,
That is awesome.
which is nuts to know that it was just basically like all can come and worship here, but you have to own it when you
All
do,
have.
right?
Yeah. Pay your rent, guys.
Exactly. So that gets me up because the Parthenon at this point had been standing for millennia. Like it just had been
Okay.
up and at 'em. All the columns up, the roof is
Minding its
intact.
business.
Exactly. Live-in
Maintenance men, all that.
architecture, like it just did its thing, right? Like it just didn't have to deal with us modern Americans rocking around building things that's going to fall over in a year and a half. Well, September 26th, 1687, um, couple of things are going wrong because the Parthenon of Acropolis in Athens had a severe blow when it was partially destroyed by Francesco Morosini, the leader of the Venetian army, who he leads the Mauryan arm war, the Mauryan War. My brain just didn't want to brain, and he's
You're just making
attacking.
words up.
I pretty much am. I'm just rolling the
Roll for
dice
initiative.
of
Mm-hmm.
not syllabus syllables, the syllable
Thesaurus.
die, the syllable
There you
die.
go.
So he's going up against the Turks. It's the Venetian against the Turks, and he decides that he is going to take cannons to the Acropolis, like you do.
Ugh.
And this is why we
I
can't have
know who
nice
his
things.
descendant is.
And what's that?
I was just saying, I know who his descendant is. Cassius Clay and the cannons in the front yard.
I mean, yeah, but
Let's
this
take them where
guy,
they're not needed.
I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
This, this is a place of worship. Cannons aren't needed there.
Now, prior to the cannons being aimed at the Acropolis, they had been fortifying, the Turks had been fortifying the Acropolis and the Parthenon. They used the Parthenon as a gunpowder magazine,
Oh,
possibly in the belief that Morosini would respect the historical monument and that maybe he wouldn't attack.
okay.
But it's a Friday, it's about 7 p.m. Nobody's clocked out for the holidays. And a Venetian mortar round is fired from, a nearby hill and it blows up that gunpowder filled magazine.
Please tell me that this was an accident. Like
No, I
every
think
other war starts by accident.
this is very intentional. I think, the
Mm.
Venetians and the Turks, they had a very staged, we are going to do this. We are going to fight over the weekend. We are going to make this work. We're going to put in the extra hours.
We're gonna be here at dawn, boys.
Yes.
Okay.
And the explosion led to the detonation of the building's central portion, which caused the cello's walls to crumble into rubble. Many of the columns topple, causing the archivites, the triglyphs, and the metropes to come tumbling down.
Mm.
Basically, Yahtzee.
Jenga.
Yeah, no, Jink is actually a better one than me yelling Yahtzee. 300 people die in this explosion, which showered marble fragments over the nearby Turkish defenders and sparked fires that destroyed many homes.
Mm.
So it was the thing, like, and here's the thing, right? Like when I was in Athens and I was coming home, I took an Uber and I'm on my way to the airport and I'm talking to the Uber driver, very gregarious man, rated great in conversation, which I didn't know you could be, but he was, and I understand why. And he proceeds to start telling me this story because I told him I got, what did you
Okay.
see? And so it's like, basically he's playing bingo. Like, what did the little
What
tourist
did the
do?
tourists see?
Yeah. And he's like,
Yeah, I love
oh,
that for him.
yeah. I mean, look, we all do things to keep our workday interesting. And he just makes the passing comment about it only falling in the last 200 years. And I was like, no, the thing's like millennia years old. I'm assuming that fell somewhere around the 1100s. We were in the Dark Ages. And he's like,
I'm
oh,
gonna
yeah,
be
no.
honest, I actually thought it fell like 500s.
Yeah,
So,
true. No, but at that point, it was still like, come
living La
all
Vida
ye
Loca.
faithful.
Great. Now it's Christmas into August. Thank you.
Now, subsequently, Morosini, he decides to take the best part he can out of this awful situation of destroying pieces of antiquity. And so he decides to jump at the chance to loot sculptures from the ruins.
And take them to the British Museum because that's what we're good at.
No,
I
no, no,
know
no,
he's
no,
not.
no, 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 no. He's Venetian.
Damn.
He's
I
Venetian.
know, but I know he's Venetian,
But put
but
a
it
pin in the British.
only feels right.
I'll bring the British back into this. I
Okay.
promise, because
Sorry.
consistency. The only thing I'm leaving off the table is syphilis.
Really?
I just didn't see it, you know, I'm sure it was around, but I just didn't hear it freely referenced, so I didn't grab for it.
Okay.
So he ends up damaging many of the buildings and everything further in his looting because he's getting sculptures of Poseidon and Athena's horses that had fallen to the ground and broken into pieces, and he's trying to pull them off of building, west pediments and things like he is going to town. Now,
Okay.
year later, 1688, the Venetians abandoned Athens to avoid confrontation with the larger force of Turks that had assembled at, I'm going to butcher this because I didn't look it up, Chalcis, Chalcis.
I like that. Okay.
Okay. Um, Now, the Venetians, they'd considered blowing up the remains of the Parthenon because maybe they didn't want to leave the job half done. Basically, the thing is because it is at the top of a hill, it's a very good defensive position. They didn't want it to they didn't want the military to use it as fortifications, which I
That's
guess makes
fair.
sense. But I mean, these are like, again, ancient buildings, and this does seem like a crime against humanity. Now, the Turks do end up recapturing the Acropolis because the Venetians abandoned it. Now, they end up using the rubble produced by this explosion to erect a smaller mosque within the shell of the ruined Parthenon. And for the next century and a half, parts of the remaining structure are looted for building material.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I am confused. Were the Turks not okay, so I think I missed a step. The
Okay.
Venetians are there and the
Yeah.
Turks are there. Who is currently in ownership of
Turks were in ownership. Venetians came in to try to kick them out, and the Turks
Okay,
expelled.
that's where I thought we were going, but all of a sudden something you just said made me think I had this very backwards. I do not think it was something you said. I think it was how I heard it.
No, I mean, chances are this is all on me. I mean, there's a bunch of gray matter between my ears that is just non-compliant.
I think it was on me.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you have this one.
All right. So
Carry on. Sorry.
now I did tell you to hold that thought about the British because 1801 to 1812, the British show up and, well, are they British it up. Now, the most notorious dude
They do
is
what they do
this.
best.
I mean, look, they're gifted. There's a dude named Thomas Bruce, and he is Britain's seventh Earl of Elgin. which just I can't not eye roll saying that name. It just sounds
It
pompous.
sounds like he has a face you want to punch.
Yes, actually.
Mm-hmm. I got you.
Now, his men systematically remove a large number of the temple's remaining sculptures, including famous friezes, and he ships them back to England from, 1801 to 1812. So he's got like 11-year reign on this. Now, according to him, he received the necessary permit to look and examine the sculptures in and around the Parthenon. Did he have permission to take the things? Unclear.
My guess is no.
Unclear. But either way, they're not
Okay.
there. And Lord Elgin, um, him and his men, they elect to cut the back halves off of many of the sculptures to lighten the load for their shipment back to England.
I'm sorry, so we're missing butts.
There's no buts about it. He is. He's not here for the booty. He is not Sir
Okay.
Mix-a-Lot in this retelling.
Well, of course not.
Now, 1820s roll around, the Acropolis again becomes a battleground. And this time it's during the War of Independence for the Greeks. Now they're struggling to regain their freedom from the Ottoman Empire because the Turks are still there. Now, archaeologists estimate that the Turkish soldiers removed 520 blocks of marble from the Parthenon ruins to create makeshift defenses, or that they broke them
Ooh,
apart
okay.
and made bullets from the lead that coated the iron clamps that was holding the marble together,
Okay.
which I
That
didn't know
seems like a
was a
lot of
thing.
work
But I mean, if you're up there, you got nothing better to do as you're hunkered down under this marble as
thing.
people are whizzing bullets at you. You're not going to exactly like get on your phone and play Candy Crush. You're busy.
Okay.
Now, it's 1829. The Greeks finally get their independence, and that's when the Bavarian soldiers arrive. And they drive the remaining Turks from the Acropolis. But then they take up residence in the Parthenon's mosque and briefly turn the mosque into a barracks,
Okay.
which
I was just gonna say, this particular building has had such a life of varied use. I am shocked it wasn't a brothel at some point.
it was a barracks.
Close enough.
So then, okay, we're going to fast forward quite a bit when you think about it in the grand scheme to the 1890s. So we're now in the Victoria era. There is a chief restoration engineer named Nicholas Balanos, and he is working under the auspices of the Greek government. And he starts this project to strengthen the interior walls and insert casts of some of the sculptures that were removed by our Lord Elgin and re-erect some of the colonnades that were lost in the 1687 explosion.
Oh wow, okay.
So he's trying to do a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, modern preservationists believe that Balanos did more damage to the Parthenon than good because he doesn't do things like actually make sure that he puts the block back in its original position. He kind of clicks that good enough button and just rolls forward. And so
Like the thumb measurement?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So he kind of phones it in, and this compromises a structural integrity or something. It's not a building. That's not
Weird.
important, right?
We don't need extra parts.
So he's doing things like putting iron clamps to keep the masonry together. Now, there's a small problem with his choice materials because he's not using the lead-coated iron that the ancient Greeks had used. His clamps are exposed to the elements and they eventually corrode.
Oh,
That expanding iron causes irreparable damage to many of the already cracking building materials.
yeah, yeah, that checks.
Yeah. So good times. Good times. Um,
Gonna spray some Rust-Oleum on there.
Call it good. Slap some
Hmm.
duct tape. Now, fast forward to 1975, and there's a new group in charge. There's the Acropolis Restoration Project team that's headed by a Greek architect. Architect? Yeah, my
I
brain,
liked Architect better.
right? Brain mouth, they are not working together. Can't wait to edit this. It's gonna be lovely. Um, Dude named
Send
Manlius
the bill to my
Kors.
husband.
Cinebuilt is your husband.
S- Send the bill to my husband.
Send the bill. Okay, that makes so much more sense. I was like, who's Cinebuilt?
What's this? Is this a cookie?
This sounds like it's delicious. Now, so this new team, they get to spend $90 million to restore the Parthenon and the
In
surrounding structures.
1975.
Yeah, 1975 money.
Okay,
So good times,
we're looking good.
right?
Yeah.
The team, they inventory and measure thousands of marble fragments that are scattered just cattywampus across the Acropolis because there's been some wars. We've
Mm,
we've done some things.
we've been busy.
Yeah, she's gone through her train wreck years and now she's coming out of it.
Have this image of a building with black mascara
Yeah.
on its face.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it's pretty much the Acropolis' life at this point. Now, they end up making plans or putting plans in place to for each salvageable chunk and making sure it gets back into its original position, while new marble from the very quarry that originally supplied the stone gets brought in. So they're
That's
bringing it
cool.
back to basics, which I really appreciate. Now, they're also using non-corrosive titanium rods to hold the masonry together because they can learn from the previous jerk's mistakes. And all of the remaining original sculptures had been removed and put in the now climate-controlled Acropolis Museum, the one that wasn't taken by the Elgin.
Okay.
Um, and you can actually go like so when you go there and you actually look at the Parthenon, they have exact replicas there. So you can see things there, but then you go to the museum and actually see the legit ones. Now, of course, when you go there and you're looking at some of the statues, you see the casts of the ones that Elgin took, or you see like a straight up missing pillar because the British.
They're taking their world tour.
I mean, and by world tour, they went to one country and stopped, which,
Good job,
yeah.
guys.
Now, despite all of these efforts, the Parthenon, when it finally reopens, remains a partial ruin. And there's traces of the original temple, the church, the mosque. Many of those things are intentionally left intact to kind of be a testament to tell the story of how it
That's so
survived.
cool.
And I kind of wish I had known those little bits when I was there because I feel like that would have given me so much more depth and context to the history as opposed to just zipping back to 480
Yeah,
BC.
I love that. That's how all historical buildings should be, some remnant of what was once. That's fantastic.
Yeah. But that's the
Yeah.
story of the fall of the Parthenon.
I mean, it took way longer for it to fall than I thought.
And it didn't fall because of an earthquake or because of a natural disaster.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest though, we probably saw that coming.
I mean, I just assumed that it was probably an earthquake.
I, I think if it would have fallen back when I had originally thought, that would make sense. But the minute you said it survived that, I went, oh, yeah, okay, so
Oh, yeah, that was
humans
our
did it.
fault. Yeah. This is why we can't
Yeah,
have nice things.
facts. Um, Before I tell you who what my sources are, I am going to say this. We as Westerners, if you will, we as native English speakers have an incredibly hard time pronouncing this individual's name correctly.
I'm scared.
With that said, you shouldn't be. It's okay. With that said, up until I started doing the collecting notes for this and, asking questions about it, I had thought that the things that are named after this individual, that was the correct way to pronounce it because why wouldn't it be? It's not.
That's a hint,
But
and I don't
because
know where we're going.
it's okay. Because of my prior years of using this name, I'm just going to say that I think I'm going to have a very hard time pronouncing it any other way, so please forgive me. But all that to say, I want to tell you the story of the astronomer Tycho Brahe. Are you familiar with any of our Renaissance era astronomers?
No.
Fantastic. So my sources are space.com, and that was the bulk of my sources. Britannica, time.com, like timemagazine.com, the New World Encyclopedia, the Galileo Project, a couple of university tidbits, and schoolsobservatory.org. I also just feel like I should state this. I did do a little bit of Wikipedia-ing. Anyway, I looked on Wikipedia to
You
get some kind of
Wikipede?
understanding. I did. I Wikipeed, but at least I did not Wikipood. Um, to get some understanding on his familial situation because the other sources were not so big into his early life, they were big into his accomplishments. And I was just kind of curious about some things. So, with that said, his name is, well, let me just say this. He is a Danish astronomer, and he would go on to pave the way for a lot of future discoveries. And he had a wild personal life, in my opinion. Like, you know how we hear about like the crazy, super connected, totally wild, and often petty lives of artists? And that just
Yes.
seems kind of right. Like, to me, that seems right. I don't know why, but I guess it just kind of sits with genius. Like, they just have such insane lives. But
Genius? Like,
when,
are you telling me that like Einstein was doing keg stands?
I mean, like, I wouldn't put it past him if we're honest. He had great hair and, gorgeous legs, so cake stand it is. Um, when Bra was born, I'm gonna try to tell you his Danish
I
name
like how you're
as it
saying
is
bra,
pronounced.
and what I'm hearing is bruh.
Yeah, well, okay, so you have to understand how hard it is for me to not say bra and to try to slow it down and say bra. Um, his name was pronounced to Odinson Bra. It is not spelled like it is pronounced. However, he adopts a Latinized form of it, the Tycho Brahe we know today, when he's about 15 years old. That being said, he is born December 14, 1546, in Denmark to a very prestigious family, both his mother and his father's sides. His father, Odedi Brahe, was both a noble and a statesman who served on the Privy Council. And it is worth noting, and I thought this was really interesting. Not only did his father, but all of his grandfathers served on the Privy Council for the Danish royal family at one time
Dang.
or another. So like if that kind of sets the stage for his life, right? His mother, by the name of Beat Klausdotter Billy, I think I said it right, and thank God I only have to say it once. She probably in her deserves her own story, to be honest. She was the chief lady in waiting for Queen Sophia from the years 1584 to 1592, as well as being a feudal fief holder in her own right.
Oh.
Tycho is the eldest of 12 siblings with 8 surviving to adulthood, which I think for that time is pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, he was a twin, but his twin did not survive to their baptism.
Oh.
Here's where his life starts to take a pretty interesting turn. When he's about 2 years old, this is nuts to me, his uncle, another Danish-born nobleman by the name of Jorgen Brahe, um, kind of absconds with him without telling his parents.
That's
So,
that's not a problem, is it?
uh, so here's the thing. There's some belief that perhaps Jorgen and his wife are known to be childless, which makes them heirless, and it seems to be that there was some sort of deal worked out where once Tycho's father bore children, he would just let Jorgen adopt one of them.
Take a pick of the litter.
However, I- right? Okay, that feels very weird, but yeah. However, so Tycho being the oldest child, Uncle Joran doesn't abscond with him until he has siblings. So he's about two. So he's
You make
he's
sure
got at
you have
least
the
one
heir and the
sibling.
spare.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of an interesting because that was exactly what my first thought was like, oh, well, at least he waited until he knew that, they could have more children. But it is also weird that it seems that once Tycho was born, his parents decided they actually didn't want to go through with this deal. So the fact that he kind of walked away with him un without his parents' knowledge is very interesting. But
You say interesting. I'd say
this
felonious because I would become.
livid, evidently they were not. Like it seems that they fell back on that old, well, we did make a deal.
They're
Perhaps
not.
he was
If
coloring on the walls.
he's not a
I'm
fairy. Like you can.
Dude, I think the same thing. I am not trying to justify their actions, but what I will say is Uncle Jorgen and his wife treated Tycho exceptionally. He was given the best education you could give him. He goes on in his adulthood to say that he was well cared for. He didn't struggle for anything. He knew he was loved. He was heir to both houses, which is insane. That being said, he also has a relationship with his other siblings. So I'm assuming that it was like, Uncle Jorgen just took you, but he's invited back for Thanksgiving. It's fine.
He's your summer
And
dad.
they yeah, it's so bizarre to me, but all that to say, his biological father insisted that his children have their education to be reared up as military leaders. So they're taught the ways of the court, sword fighting, horsemanship, and the like. But Uncle Jorgen gives Tycho a classic Latin education. Like he gives him the very best of the best, which honestly I think is exactly what he needed because I think without being in his uncle's home, he wouldn't have had that opportunity to explore the things that he had passion for. Like he went to school to become a lawyer, to do the things that your family tells you need to do, but then eventually was like, actually, no, I really just love the stars. And doesn't seem to have had any real ramification for changing his mind about his education. Um, During his travels, he's about 20 years old. Him and a fellow student who's actually a cousin, they get into a bit of a tiff, a kerfuffle, if you will, and there's a duel.
Mm.
hmm As a result, he scores probably the world's least charming scar. In fact, retired professor of history at Luther College, Robert Christensen, says that, quote, a dueling scar is a mark of aristocratic courage, but that's if you have a little line on your cheek or a little scratch on your forehead. Our boy Tycho lost a whole chunk of his nose.
Oh,
hmm
hot.
And he would spend the rest of his life wearing a prosthetic, which you would think A normal person outside of your and I's conversation would think that must have been hard to come by, except for syphilis exists. So prosthetic noses were not out of the ordinary.
You
Cannot
know,
believe I
I
brought
joked.
syphilis here.
I joked about leaving that off.
It was so hard for me to not say something when you said that too.
Hot dang.
Well, sorry to ruin the streak we were on.
Are you? Because
No, like not even a little bit.
the fact that syphilis is in nearly every page of history,
It's it's like the great connector, if you will.
it's the glitter that holds history together.
Truly. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Um, do you care to know? Oh, well, excuse me. Um, him and the individual that he had a duel with, they actually do end up becoming rather good friends for the remainder of their life. But do you want to know what they are fighting over? Like, if you had to guess?
A woman. The last
Come
hot
on, that would
pocket.
be reasonable. That would also be reasonable. Well,
Um,
sources say, go ahead, one more guess.
no, I got nothing. I mean, I thought I was genius with the last hot pocket.
There are sources that suggest, and this is the most likely of the scenarios, they are fighting over who is a better mathematician.
Nerds.
Despite the nose, or lack thereof, he does in fact find love, which, to be honest, is a whole nother story. Like that's a side quest all on its own. And not only that, but he goes on to revolutionize the world of astronomy. Space.com has this great quote. In 1572, Brahe observed a supernova in the constellation of Cassiopeia, brighter than Venus. The new star remained visible for a year and a half. In 1577, he observed a comet. Current theory taught that both were disturbances in the atmosphere. However, Brahe's precise measurements revealed differently. He proved that the supernova never changed with regard to the surrounding stars, and that the comet orbited beyond the path of the moon, contradicting the ideas that the heavens never changed. So, at the time, this is incredibly super forward thinking on his part, and he challenges a lot of the common thoughts and knowledge of the time. Space.com goes on to explain that in Tycho Brahe's time, the geoheliocentric system, which is the planets moving around the sun and the stars, with the sun and the moon, while the sun moved around the earth, with Earth at the center of the universe. Like that's what they believe. So the earth is the center of the universe. Um, he's got some alternate theories, and they kind of also go against the ideas of Copernicus of the time too, which or shortly before him, which I don't know, I just feel like you got a lot of balls, bud. Good for you and your fake nose. Um, he also does something that a lot of other people at the time did not do, and he keeps super meticulous notes. Like all the notes. And
Mm.
all the others working at the time, all the other astronomers working at the time, they seem to only focus on specific bodies or specific times in their orbit. Tycho is tracking the whole thing through their entire orbit. Some of his measurements are accurate to half an arc minute, which is especially poignant because telescopes wouldn't be invented for another several decades, not until 1608.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he's within degrees, like a very, very minute measurement in the grand scheme of space. And in 1575, King Frederick of Denmark, not my potato king, grants him the island of Havana and helps him fund the building of his observatory. The king wants to see the work from the windows of the palace he's currently building. He wants to see the observatory from his windows. And this is essentially because, right, we're in the heart of the Renaissance, and so every court in Europe wants to show off. They want to dazzle. They want to show you all the new things, right? All the new thoughts, all the new tech. And Tycho would serve as sort of a consultant to the court doing things like quote, commenting on explaining unusual natural phenomenon, such as the Great Comet of 1577, and he produced horoscopes for the royal family using both his knowledge of astronomy and astrology. And I just
Huh.
find that fascinating
I would probably
because,
believe in astrology a lot more if I had someone with his acumen.
yeah, like as I was learning that, my thought process was it's hard for me, like in my mentality, to be like astrology is not just this, kind of hokey, go get your palm read sort of thing. Um, but in his day and age, it would be very hard to not kind of want to believe what he had to say, given what he's already pointed out. So I thought that was really interesting. Due to reasons, in 1597, Brahe relocates to Prague. And if you've said it once, you've said it 1,000 times. Life doesn't happen in a vacuum. He is now working at the court of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II.
Oh.
The same Holy Roman Emperor who probably had the Voynich manuscript from one of our earlier stories. He is working as the imperial mathematician to the Holy Roman Emperor. Who do you think his assistant is?
Is it going to be Pope Pius II?
Oh, I would have loved that. No, that would have been so fun. No, it's Johann Kepler.
Oh, okay.
Like German astronomer. Yours just totally trumped mine. The German astronomer, the laws of planetary motion, that guy. They worked together for a few years. Um, they don't always get along. There's a little bit of infighting, a little bit of hurt feelings, a
You
lot of bit of
mean
I'm not sharing my notes with you.
the man who had a full-on sword fight to prove the best mathematician as opposed to like mathing it out, he doesn't play well with others? Is this what you're telling me?
I know, I'm sorry, that must come as a real shock to you. Um, yeah. Like I'm sorry, this just it makes me laugh because here he is being at the forefront of all of this really amazing new thought and this really amazing new innovation with the tools he's creating for his measurements. And he again is doing this without the telescope we know of today, right? He will not share his notes with Kepler. Like he holds them close to his chest at all times, despite the amount of like, it would be really helpful. As if you shared some of that amazing data you've kept over the last 20 years. But anyway, while attending a banquet on October 24th, 1601, at the age of 54, our fellow Bra, he's drunk excessively, like he is over the top. But societal customs at the time don't allow for him to excuse himself before his host. So it's
Oh
believed that
no.
he just simply refuses to leave to use the restroom. It's thought that this makes up some sort of bladder infection that he probably was already suffering from, much worse, and as a result, he develops
What is that?
uremia. I'm gonna think it's an infection of the area.
Of the bladder? The urethra?
Uh, the whole, yeah, that's
The
my understanding. I could
okay.
be wrong, but yeah. According to Kepler, Bra lives for another 5 to 11 days, depending on the source.
Oh.
And he dies um October 29th. At least that's what we think. Time magazine has a great quote about this. He died 11 days after the fateful dinner at the age of 54. Austin's, I have such a hard time with this word. Ostensibly from both the uremia caused by his burst bladder, and a fatal case of politeness, because he just wouldn't get up to go relieve himself because society says otherwise. That being said, there are rumors, and there are those that believe it was, in fact, not natural causes or over politeness, but rather murder.
Murder.
Poison, to be exact.
Oh,
Would you care to hear who the two possible suspects, the two
Kepler.
favored suspects are? Kepler, of course. He has much to gain with Tycho's death. All the data that he's been working on immediately goes to him. He like rushes to the office and grabs it, right? So he's got all this great information. Or it could have been one of the astronomer's own cousins, on the word of the Danish king Christian IV. It's alleged that Tycho may have been having an affair with the king's own mother. Are you
Oh,
clutching your pearls?
I mean, look, everybody needs some.
Well, every now and then, right? Gold
Hmm.
nose or not. So in 1901, they did what any good scientist group would do, and on the 300th anniversary of his death, they opened his tomb, dug him up, or for a more polite term, exhumed his body. This goes on to only add more fuel to the whole speculation that he's poisoned, right? Um, Again, he is exhumed in 2010 because, new tech. It's been
Yeah.
100 years. They test his bones and his beard hairs, and they show signs of mercury concentrations in his body.
But
However,
okay, here's where we're going to say that mercury was used for everything and probably seeped in also via the hats that he wore.
probably, but the thing is, there wasn't enough in his body to have killed him.
All right.
Okay. So there is a researcher, he's an associate professor of chemistry at the University of Southern Denmark. He analyzes the mercury levels. In 2016, he says, in fact, chemical analysis of the bones indicate that Tycho Brahe was not exposed to an abnormally high mercury load in the last 5 to 10 years of his life. However, we found traces of gold in Tycho Brahe's hair, and we can establish that he was exposed to gold while these hairs were still on his body. It may have been the cutlery and the plates of gold, or maybe the wine he drank contained gold leaf. It's also possible that he concocted and consumed elixirs containing gold, perhaps work as an out or that he worked with alchemy, right? Like that's a possibility. However, they also at this time find these greenish stains around the nasal area of his corpse, and these contain traces of copper and zinc, which kind of puts to rest the fact that for years people believed his nose was made of silver or gold. It was made of brass. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was not made of the precious metals we thought it was. That being said, I did want to note a couple of fun things. He is said to have kept a rather eccentric court. His entourage included a jester, a dwarf named Jep, who supposedly had psychic powers, and a prize pet elk that the astronomer used to give beer to until it met its end after drinking a bit too much and falling down the steps.
Oh,
hmm Additionally, I would like to say that his sister, Sophie, he was very close with, and she actually did a lot of his work with him. It's believed she acted as his muse for astronomy, and I think that's really special, especially in the 1500s. According to what we have today, his observations, they were the most accurate possible before the invention of the telescope, and they include a comprehensive study of the solar system and the accurate position of more than 777 fixed stars,
wow.
right? The Galileo project says that Tycho Brahe's contributions to astronomy were enormous. In addition to his observations, he also designed and built instruments, periodically calibrating them and checking their accuracy. He thus revolutionized astronomical instruments. He's got a lot, right? There's a crater on the moon, a crater on Mars, and an asteroid all named after him. And I think that's super fun. I also have a couple of really fun pictures of him if you care to see them.
I'm here for
They're I
this.
think they're more, I think, fun than they're meant to be serious, but well, at least one is. And here it is. I don't even know how you're going to begin to describe this. Good luck to you.
She's
I
showing me
assume
an
that's the
ancient
elk.
Photoshop of a elk coming down a spiral staircase with the hands and feet of a man and a very Danish looking face that has a golden nose and elk antlers and that coffee filter collar.
Mm, perfect description. The
Yeah,
other one is just your standard run-of-the-mill portrait painting. But
with a
that's
handlebar mustache that,
Wyatt Earp might be jealous of, if
I
we're
mean, the
honest.
handlebar mustache probably touches collarbones if there's no other accoutrement from his neck keeping it up.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I thought the nodes and just his life, who he was, is just absolutely nuts. So that's the story of Tycho Brahe. And if you're a fan of sci-fi, I highly recommend this series, The Expanse. This is not where I learned about him from, but his name is mentioned a lot in the show. So there you go.
You've mentioned The Expanse to me before, and I've maybe seen 15 minutes of one episode. It was like not the first episode and not at the beginning. So Hubs had it
That'll
on, and
get
I
you.
was like, all right, I'm out.
What's this? Yeah, you have to watch from the beginning. You have to make it through the whole first season because the first season is hard, but the rest of the seasons are amazing. So there's that. So if you enjoyed, I'll let you do it.
All right. So if you've enjoyed this incredible roundup of very disparate stories, one space themed, one just blowing things up and turning it into a place of worship or whatever. About the only thing that Parthenon wasn't was a bar. Then
You don't
rate,
know that.
review, subscribe, and talk to your favorite elk owner
Yeah. Or your
and tell
favorite
them about the pod.
astrologer.
Yeah, and tell them about the podcast. Maybe
Yeah.
your tarot card reader as she's like trying to mix astrology and astronomy and become a bit more
Yeah.
scientific and data backed. Tell her.
Yeah.
And on that
We
note,
like this.
goodbye.
Goodbye.
I thought you locked that door, you
I
lying wretch.
She just called me a lying wretch. I told her I parked next to the door today so I could lock it if need be. Since you came in yesterday wearing a wig and about made me pee myself.